Well, welcome everyone in. As everyone's joining, just want to say thank you for joining us for our April edition of CMMC Connect. We're glad you could all be here with us. My name is Monica Pastor. I'm the Senior Events Marketing Manager here at Redspin, and I will be guiding today's conversation. For those of you who are new, our goal of CMMC Connect is to really break down what can often feel like a complex and evolving topic into something more practical and actionable. Each session is focused on sharing insights, clarifying requirements, and helping you better understand what CMMC means for your organization, whether you're just getting started or further along in your journey. Before we get started, let's quickly cover a few housekeeping items. First, CMMC Connect is an interactive session, so please feel free to turn on your camera while you're listening in. Take yourself off mute when you have a question and we can talk together. Next, here's how today will go. We'll start with a quick review of updates from the field. Then we'll run through answers to this month's pre-submitted questions. And after that, we'll open up the floor for the live Q&A. To help us stay organized and make sure we answer as many questions as we can, please post your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat. We'd like to reserve the chat for comments, feedback, and general conversation. During the live Q&A segment towards the end, please raise your hand and come off mute to ask a question. Just please, we ask if you could limit it to one question per person to keep it fair, but we're always here to talk afterwards. If you want to have a deeper dive, we're happy to set up a call afterwards as well. Next, check out the resources tab near the chat and the Q&A in your Zoom interface for helpful links that we might reference today. And as a reminder, this session is being recorded as a podcast, and the episode will be published and shared as soon as it's ready. And finally, don't forget to enter in that feedback survey at the end. It only takes a minute and really helps us make these sessions better. All right, next up, let's meet our panel today. Thomas, over to you.
Wow, I get the mic first today. I'm honored, Monica. I don't know how to take this from you. But Dr. Thomas Graham, VP CISO for Redspin. I've been around the block a couple of times. I may have thrown some newspapers at you, but here just to honestly not act serious, but that's no different than anything I do on a daily basis. So, Damien, over to you.
Hi, I'm Damien Galde. I'm one of the lead CCAs here at Redspin, and looking forward to today's session.
All right. I think everybody knows me. I'm Rob Teague, VP Redspin, oversee the consulting and assessment teams, but mostly authorizing official at Redspin. Welcome back, everybody.
Greetings, everybody. Aaron Freetag. I'm a lead CCA for Redspin. Myself and my team have done past a dozen assessments so far over the last year, and background in U.S. Army systems, classified systems, and NIST 853. Glad to be here.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm Lauren Frickel, Marketing Director here at Redspin, and one of two fellow Minnesotans here on the call today. So go Minnesota Wild.
All right. Thanks for the introductions, team. Now let's get into some ecosystem updates from the field. So, Rob, over to you.
Yeah. So I believe this is Tuesday. Everything's blurring together, folks. Tuesday was the town hall by the Cyber AB, and they released a lot of information. One of the things they release is, how many assessments have been conducted, how many organizations are certified. But one of the other things they addressed during the town hall was the phase two, which phase two, if you look at the 32 CFR rule, is when they are starting to update all the level 2 certificates. That begins November 10th, 2026. But there's a lot of folks out there that's thinking that is the deadline. That is not really the case. However, your primes may be driving that as a deadline. So pay attention to your primes, because if you're one of their subs and they're telling you that's the deadline for you. But in reality, across the entire ecosystem, November 10th, 2027 is when they'll complete all the level 2 updates to those contracts. The primes can enforce whatever timeline they wish. I think by them setting that November 10th, 2026 deadline, it's getting all of their subs ahead of the actual deadline. So just keep that in mind. If you want more information, I believe, Lauren, you said we're going to have the link to the town hall for you guys as a resource. Highly recommend you go out and take a look at that and see what Matt kind of talked about it. The next one is the Cyber EF. So for the longest time since the program has been started, we have been talking about the RPO program and how it's been kind of flapping out there with little oversight and guidance. That is now finally starting to get stood up. It's been a priority for the Cyber AB, and here it is. So they are setting up the new Cyber Engagement Forum, which is going to really focus on those RPOs out there and kind of cleaning that ecosystem up. There are a lot of RPOs that are doing great things, but their name is being trashed by those RPOs that are not doing great things. So that is going to clean all of that up, and it's going to be on the Cyber AB marketplace for you guys to go out and find those RPOs that are really doing good things out there. Okay. Last thing, we're hearing a lot less of what is CMMC, but we're still hearing it. Believe it or not, there are organizations that still don't know what CMMC is, and they've been contractors for 20 years. I don't know if their head is in the sand. I'm not sure. But whatever it is, we are at a critical time where you cannot wait. If you have not started, get your implementation moving now, because you are going to get caught behind the bus and you will not be able to bid on contracts after next year. So keep that in mind. If you are unsure of what CMMC is, please reach out to us. We can point you to all the websites where you can go get all the resources you need. But more importantly, we can bring you the perspective of CMMC directly from the Department of War's perspective and why we have this program. So it's vital that if you're working in this industry, you understand CMMC, because it's going to have significant impacts to your business. Last thing for you guys, what conferences are you going to? We attend a lot of the CMMC conferences, like, the CS5s and those big ones. But where are you guys going? Where would you like to see us come out and meet with you? Maybe come out to those conferences that you're attending where you're not getting a lot of C3 PAOs out there. We're willing to come out anywhere and talk with anybody. So if you could, in the chat, just kind of drop in if you're attending some conferences. We'll see if it's on our list. If it's not, we'll add to it. We'll let you know we're going to be there, and we'll sync up for a lunch or dinner as we go out there. So looking forward to hearing from you guys. Lauren, I believe that is it. The number of level 2 certs. Okay.
We don't let Rob out very much, guys.
No, and Rob is brain scattered today, so not enough coffee. Okay, so the Cyber AB released the latest number. Lauren, do we have that number? It was...
Yeah, it's right here on the screen here, Rob. We're at 1,198.
Thanks.
So we are up 124.
I just wanted you to point it out for everybody. Yes. So 1,198. So what does that mean? There's only 103 C3 PAOs. There's a question we're going to dive into later about, how many assessments are kind of taking place, et cetera, et cetera. Keep in mind, I just issued a certificate yesterday to an organization that just finished their CMMC assessment with Redspin. They are number 2,088 in the EMAS system. So if you look at 1,198 that are certified, and then you look at this certificate that has 2,088, there's a big disparity. So why? Many C3 PAOs, when they first sign with a client and they're roughly 3 to 6 months out from starting the actual assessment, they will load the pre-assessment form into EMAS. That right away puts you in EMAS, which bumps that number up, even though they haven't started anything yet. So in that number, 1,198 is the number that is certified as of the date of pulling that information. Some are sitting in there waiting to start their assessments. Some are actually in their assessments. Some have completed their assessments and are sitting in a phase 4 remediation phase, which means some minor not met items were found and allowed in the POAM, which means they shift to phase 4 and they get up to 180 days to remediate those findings. I believe there was like 45 or 54 dyslexic kind of stuff that are sitting in phase 4 that's in the EMAS system right now. So they could be anywhere in the stages. Just know that that number that the Cyber AB provides is the actual amount of companies that are certified. 1,198 is a far cry from where we are supposed to be at right now. So keep that in mind. The backlog is still going to continue. We're getting a lot of new C3 PAOs in, so there's a lot of bandwidth and dates opening up with them. They are not as experienced as as the others, but they can still take care of you just as good as any other C3 PAO. But the longer you wait to get on a C3 PAO schedule, the more jeopardy you're putting yourselves in of not meeting the deadlines.
Great. Thank you for those updates, Rob. Appreciate it. Okay, time for some pre-submitted Q&A. We did have several pre-submitted questions, while others that we're going to go over were unanswered questions from this week's Cyber AB Town Hall. So we'd like to cover that for you. So first question of the day, can OSCs that are in the process of a CMMC Level 2 audit still work as subs on prime contracts? Damien, over to you.
This is going to kind of go back to some of the things Rob was talking about in the last slide. A lot of this is going to come down to what is in your contract. So if you already have that CMMC clause being flowed down to you from your customer, you're going to know, right? Your customers are going to be telling you about it, and you're going to probably have some issues. If you don't have it yet, you're good. You really do need to focus on getting that level 2 assessment done and getting that certification. The best resource for this question, though, is going to be your customer. And it's going to be reaching out to them and saying, hey, we're working on our assessment. When do you think we're going to have this level 2 requirement flowed down to us? And having that open line of communication with your customer.
Yeah, and if I can add on, the key here is that your self-attestation is still going to apply until you get your certification complete. So as long as you got your self-assessment at level 2 complete, you can still work on the contracts. The intent of this entire program is not to stop you from providing those services. It's just to make sure those services and the information surrounding them are secured. So yes, you will still be able to work with as a sub to the prime contracts. Just know, as Damien kind of mentioned, they will drive to you what date they want you certified by.
All right. Thanks, Damien and Rob. Okay, this next question goes to Dr. Graham. When will NIST 800-171-3 become the standard? What are the new requirements in Rev 3? Thomas.
Sorry, just messing with you, Monica. So as far as when it'll become the standard, I mean, it'll become the standard whenever the 32 CFR Part 170 rule and DFAR 7012 is updated. Because if you remember, the department hard-coded the Rev 2 requirements into those two documents. So more than likely, at minimum, they'll have to go through an amendment process to become updated before Rev 3 comes into the lexicon. Now, as far as a specific timetable, I can only offer my opinion there because I'm not a member of the DoD, and they're the only ones that would probably know that timeline specifically. But what I can tell you is more than likely it's trending in the not too distant future. The reason why I say that is ODPs are out there. You're starting to see other agencies come online with the 800-171 implementation requirements. ISACA is now the new CAICO, and all of the background information associated with CCP, CCAs, certifications, and everything else are all in the process of being updated with the new requirements. If you held me against a wall, I'd probably say at the earliest, you may start hearing something towards the end of this year. But again, that's just my opinion. As far as the new requirements, yeah, there's less actual requirements or practices, but there's more objectives. There's over 400 objectives in Rev 3, and they actually bring in a lot of those items from Rev 2 that were reserved for NFOs, as well as introduces new families such as, acquisitions and stuff like that. If you haven't taken a look at it, please do. But the final piece of advice I'll give you here is if you're not targeting your L2 assessment until sometime after the first of the calendar year, I would be ensuring that at minimum I had those ODPs in place that the department released last year. So that way, if you're now held accountable to Rev 3 in your assessment, you'll already have those in place and they don't hurt you for Rev 2 either.
All right. Thank you, Thomas. Okay, this next question is a little lengthy, but I do want to read it all for our podcast listeners so they can hear the full question. So here we go. We are looking at an AI program to modify our machining programs for our products. If we must use a CUI print in the program, we have to transfer it with FIPS 140.2 encryption on a FedRAMP certified equivalent platform, in this case, AWS GovCloud. The data is sent out via the GovCloud to the cloud program, and modifications are made in the cloud program. The program does not save or store this data. It then sends it back via the AWS Cloud Gov into our enclave. Is the transfer via the AWS GovCloud sufficient to meet CMMC requirements when we do not know if the return of the data is FIPS 140.2 encrypted? Thomas, over to you again.
All right. So I want to apologize. I want to say you're not asking the right question. The encryption is only one part of it. If you're relying on encryption to protect the confidentiality of CUI, whether it's at rest or in transit, it has to be FIPS 140.2 or -2 validated at minimum. And I say at minimum because FIPS 140-3 is coming online. The right question, though, that you should be asking here is, what is storing, processing, or transmitting our CUI? Now, to your question, you very specifically state the program does not save or store the data. So therefore, CUI is not being stored in this AI component. You mentioned the transit, and that goes back to my first qualifier with, if the transfer back and forth, you're relying on that encryption, then it has to be FIPS 140-2. The part that you're missing, though, here is the processing. It sounds like at minimum that AI component is processing potentially CUI data. And if I'm wrong, please come off mute and clarify for us. But if it's processing CUI data and it's processing it in the cloud, that goes back to your DFAR 7012 requirements, which says if it's storing, processing, or transmitting, not and, but or transmitting, it has to be FedRAMP moderate or equivalent. So if the AI component is not, I would advise you to look at it very diligently, as this could become an issue.
Rob, did you want to add to that? I see you nodding your head.
No, you're not the only one that's in this boat. It's being tested all across the board ever since the Defense Department of War has kind of unleashed it and told us we can start leveraging it. So just do your due diligence with this. There are many AI tools that are out there where the repository can sit in your cloud environment, as you kind of mentioned here. Those are kind of the tools you want. You really need to focus on where that data is being stored. And then the second piece is how it's being transmitted. If you're unsure if it's transmitting via FIPS 140-2 encryption, maybe something you want to dig into, reach out to that company and have a conversation with them. So just do due diligence and you should be okay.
All right. Thank you both. All right, moving along to our next question. How strict should the separation between administrative and non-administrative accounts be? For example, should administrative accounts be restricted from performing non-security functions such as opening files or conducting web searches? Damien, over to you.
So, broadly speaking, yes, it's going to come down to how your organization is defining it. So, based on this question, I'm assuming this is around requirement 3.1.6, which is non-privileged account use. And when we look at this requirement, we have two objectives. One of them is identifying non-security functions, and then the other one is requiring users to use non-privileged accounts when accessing those non-security functions. And so in terms of CMMC, how are you identifying those non-security functions? And so if you're identifying web searches and opening files as non-security functions, then you would want to ensure that the non-privileged account is being used when you are opening files or conducting web searches. Kind of practically what I've seen in my experience, things like, if you have an admin account, you can't use the internet, stuff like that. They said, okay, internet use is a non-security function, so we don't want the privileged accounts to do that. But it's really going to come down to how you define those non-security functions in your SSP and in your documentation.
Yeah, and to add on to what Damien said, because he's on target. What can you expect during an assessment for this particular objective or requirement? We're going to ask you to demonstrate, sign into your local daily driver account and try to do a privileged function. We should see a screen pop up that says you do not have the levels required to do this. That's a check and that is a go, right? Then we want to see an admin sign into their privileged account and try to do a non-security function. That should also pop up some kind of warning that says you are not authorized to do that. So just keep that in mind. You can assign administrators all day long. It's best if you separate them. You should have somebody that's doing all the network devices, and then a backup for them. You should have somebody that's doing the help desk stuff with a backup for them. So you need to separate that, and that's what we're going to look for in separation of duties when it comes to this.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Damien. All right. Our next question, as Rob touched on earlier, came from the town hall this week. Someone asked, how are there 124 level 2 certifications in progress with only 103 C3 PAOs? So we have some graphs here. Rob, walk us through this.
Yeah. So again, kind of touched on this in the first one and mentioned this slide was coming up. So there's over 1,000 that are in a final status. We have 42 that are in a conditional status. So when they're in conditional, that means they're in phase 4 and we have up to 180 days to remediate the findings. That is going to remain in an open status in the EMAS system, which means the assessment is ongoing. So that's why when you look at those numbers, you got to pay attention to what's in the phase 4 pieces. On top of that, the numbers are skewed because many C3PAOs are putting organizations in before they even start their assessments. But that should, the 124 when there's only 103 C3PAOs, as C3PAOs, if you're one of our clients and we've got you in a phase 4, we're not just sitting on our hands waiting for you to remediate everything. We're going into the next assessment and doing that assessment. And when you're done remediating, you reach back out to us and we set a virtual Delta assessment and go back over that POAM. So there could be numerous assessments going on simultaneously while an organization is in the phase 4 remediation phase. So hopefully that helps address the question. The main number you really need to be watching is what is the final status of companies that are certified. We are well below what we need to be. I know the Cyber AB is also working on a web page within the Cyber AB marketplace for those organizations that are already certified. You can put your name on that list, and if a prime contractor loses a supplier due to CMMC failure or non-compliance, they can go to that marketplace and find those that are certified to replace their vendors. Hopefully I addressed the question for you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob. All right. Another question that came from the town hall. We are a small company that all work remote. What do we need to do to get to level 2 CMMC certified? We self-audited for the level 1. Aaron, tell us.
Well, it depends. That's a really broad question, but I'll try to answer it with a couple of different scenarios. But first, some questions. What is your current scope, and who is the responsible party for securing that environment? Do you just have internal people working those systems? Are you utilizing an external service provider, MSP, MSSP, cloud service provider? Any difference in that responsibility, whether it's shared or wholly maintained internally, can change your scope very wildly. So if you're just a basic small business, you've got a handful of users in a FedRAMP environment, you keep all of your CUI up there, then you've got a pretty good handle on the scope. You have to maintain that scope by only accessing it through virtual desktops that are totally locked down. There's no possibility for enlarging your scope by utilizing downloads or printing functions or USB media devices. So keep that scope where it is. I would say take the CCAP and then the CCA training. If you guys are really gonna do it internally, best way to have it be tailored to your environment is have one of your employees take that responsibility or designate a trusted advisor. That's why the CMMC marketplace exists. That's where we live and breathe every day. Just reach out to us directly and ask us some very specific questions. We'll help you navigate. But if you really just want to do it all on your own, take that CCP training, take the CCA training if necessary. If you feel it's necessary and your company will support it, you're going to learn about the CMMC FAQs. Those are getting updated more and more frequently. You'll understand 38.2 CFR, 48 CFR. You gotta understand the scoping guide, understand the implications of enlarging that scope. The CMMC assessment process, because if you're jumping up to that level 2, then you're going to need an assessment. if you're handling CUI. And finally, read the assessment guide. That's all available at the DoD CIO CMMC website. So a lot of that stuff is free, but the only way to know for sure is by reaching out to an expert organization like Redspin or many of our other partners and get some solid guidance.
Yeah, to add on, this is the exact conundrum Redspin faced when we first stood up. Luckily, Dr. Thomas Graham was in our rucksack and was able to kind of work through this. But the first thing you need to ask yourself as a small company, especially being remote, you're going to have to use some kind of cloud for the CUI protection. Obviously, what is the price comparison of having an on-prem system versus a cloud system? Because remember, if you do it all on-prem, you got to pay for engineers and others to come in and manage all that stuff for you, whereas the cloud does all of that for you. So do that cost analysis and comparison. But if you're a remote organization, cloud is probably your best option, which is what we leveraged.
Right. Thank you, Aaron and Rob. I think we're into, did I skip one? No, one more pre-submitted question. What are the most common pitfalls you're seeing when organizations go into a level 2 assessment thinking they're ready, then fail? Team, who can answer this one?
It depends.
I can jump in with some recent experience. The ensuring that consistent and transparent communication is happening at all levels within your organization. Ensure that your implementers are talking to the documenters and the POCs and ultimately the responsible official to understand where they really are. It doesn't turn out well if your IT team is slightly disconnected from the actual SSP language, or the implementation is running out of scope and resources that has been set by your leadership.
Scope.
The biggest thing, at least, I've seen, and, honestly, we've said it, I think, Rob, we've been saying it pretty regularly since we've had this webinar, but we'll say it again for the people in the back that, maybe couldn't hear it. The biggest thing that trips folks up is their documentation. You've got to have that traceability from your SSP to your policy and procedure to your implementation. If you don't, then that's where you're going to fall into issues. If you do have it, then guess what? It's very easy to provide that evidence for your assessor, but when you're doing your documentation, you got to keep in mind sufficiency. You have to account for the scope of your environment. Most folks do a really good job talking about, the CUI components, but they leave out security protection. They leave out some of the other items that if you look in the rule and you look into the CAP, the assessment guides, the scoping guides, you have to account for your CUI components. You got to account for your security protection assets. Specialized assets are coming into play. How are they addressed? Granted, you don't have to address them under all 110, but there is still a section you have to address them under. So start there. Start at your documentation. If you are doing that traceability, you should be in a pretty good spot.
Okay. Go ahead, Damien.
Building on what Dr. Graham was saying about scope, knowing where all your ESPs and CSPs are and having those CRMs ready to go and being able to talk to them. How many times during an assessment, oh yeah, we have this ESP over there that wasn't, discussed in the scope. Where's the documentation showing how they're meeting these controls? And it completely derails everything. So yeah, I'm just adding on to that whole discussion on documentation. It's not just your organization, it's also your ESPs and the kind of the stuff on the periphery that is supporting your infrastructure.
Yeah, and last thing for you, because I do most of the QAs for Redspin along with Dr. Graham. So the trend that we are seeing now is many organizations are leveraging RPOs to help them prepare. And that's fantastic. That's amazing. But they think that the RPO is going to do everything for them, build all their documents, build all their policies, procedures in that SSP. And then when you get into phase 2, which is the interviews, those folks have no idea what's in the policies, procedures, or the SSP because they sat back and waited on the RPO to do everything for them. This is your assessment. This is your network. RPOs are supposed to come in to help you prepare for it. But if you can't articulate what's in the documentation, we've got red flags straight up coming at the assessors. The other thing we've talked about before is muscle memory of your administrators. If it's taking first of all, when we're in a level 2 assessment and we're doing the interviews, the assessors typically are not on camera. And there's a reason, because we got multiple screens and we're constantly looking back and forth. We have your SSP up, we have your policy up, we have our workbook up where we're capturing all the notes from the interview. So there's a lot going on, so that we don't distract you from your thought process. We stay off camera. But when we ask you, can you pull up your firewall, show me where the deny all rule is, and it takes you at least 15 to or more minutes to pull that up, we now have somebody that's probably not living security. Right now, we keep in mind that updates happen, stuff changes in these applications when you're managing these things, and sometimes they move and it takes a minute to find it. That's understandable, but we've actually sat in on assessments, and Thomas can tell me if I'm wrong. We've literally waited an hour and a half for an admin to pull up the firewall configurations.
I'll tell
That-
you one. I'll give you one that's even better, Rob. We talked about it earlier here. FIPS 1.4 validated
good one.
encryption. When an assessor asks you, okay, bring up and show to me how it's configured. If you're a Windows environment, and I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but
Mhm.
generally speaking, that's a checkbox in a group policy or your intra domain services. If it takes you 30 minutes to be able to find that, you're not going to give a warm and fuzzy to your assessors.
Yeah, Mark Moore just made a great comment. Yeah, you feel like you are literally in a hot seat during those interviews. So when our assessors come in, listen, we know you guys are stressed during these assessments. There's a lot riding on it. I mean, there's a lot of pressure from your leadership on you. We've been through this assessment ourselves twice, and we're getting ready to go through accreditation, which is the assessment on steroids. We understand the stress. So our assessors come in, they smile with you, they joke with you, they try to keep that stress level down, but it does not take away that feeling of being in a hot seat when you're being questioned. And if you don't understand what the FIPS module does for your organization, that's a big red flag. If your admin can't get us to the firewall to show us where the FIPS module is enabled, that's a big red flag. By the way, if you don't know what certificate number that module is, that's probably not a big red flag, but that is a flag, right? That we're like, you need to tell us what the certificate numbers are. So we validate that during all the assessments. And that's all part of phase one. When you provide all that evidence to the teams and they're reviewing it all, they're going into the CMVP website and they are looking at those modules. They know what the numbers are. We need to hear you tell us what those certificate numbers are for the encryption modules for FIPS.
But if I can, Rob, I want to add this to it. And I know we have some other stuff that we need to get to, but the reason why Rob is harping on those certificate module numbers, if you go to the NIST FIPS validation website and you pull up one of the certificate numbers, once you go there, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of that certificate page, you're going to see a link that says security policy. Every certified module has to have one. Within that security policy is the correct implementation to ensure the module is actually operating as it's supposed to. That's what the assessors validate. And if you can't bring that up, you can't show it per that configuration, you're probably going to have a rough day, unfortunately.
Yeah. And last thing for you so we can move on. Folks are still missing the key words in NIST 800-171. Identify, specify. If we see those, that means you've got to define something. So what is your definition of that? For example, what is your definition of a user versus what your definition is of a privileged user? So we're missing that a lot. Those are little things that can get cleaned up during the phase 2 interviews, but we're seeing a lot of folks miss those key words. So pay attention to what it's asking you and just simply answer the question. That's the other thing. We sit in assessments, and when we look at their documentation, it's got college words in it. It's all these fancy blah, blah, blah words in it. When you do the interview, they just tell you what it is. And it's like, why didn't you just put that in the SSP? Because you clearly articulated what you're doing. So don't overcomplicate it. Just look at what the question's asking and address it. I mean, you guys should be okay. If you're ever concerned about it, reach out to an RPO and have them come in and take a look at your stuff before you go into the assessment. Okay, back to you, Monica. Let's go jump in here with some live questions.
We are opening it up now to live Q&A. We have till the top of the hour, so let's get to as many questions of your questions as we can. So you can go ahead and drop that question in the Q&A box or raise your hand now and we'll call on you and you can come off mute and ask your question live. I think we do have some unanswered questions in the chat right here. or in our Q&A rather. So Mark Moore is asking, what are the thoughts on open source software? We have some engineers that want to use Cura, a 3D printing slicer. The engineers' laptops are on a network that has CUI on it, while they are restricted by ACLs on whether they can see it. The open source makes us concerned from an auditor's viewpoint, so from an assessor's viewpoint. Who can answer this one for us?
So whether it's open source, whether it's closed sourced, or honestly, whether or not it's internally developed code, the requirements at this point are the same if you're talking about something that's installed into your environment. Does it go through your change management? Do you address this, the security impacts, prior to allowing it in your environment? What type of, how are you going about identifying any vulnerabilities in that code? What about your flaw remediation processes? I mean, at the end of the day, there's no restriction on using Linux. And for the most part, Linux is open source software. Granted, there's, more flavors out there than I think in Baskin and Robbins, but there's no restriction on using it. That's the short answer. It's just how are you containing it and addressing those inherent risks around open source software within the environment.
I'll add on to that. There's many open source tools and even operating systems that are currently in use by the DoD. They've got published DoD secure technical implementation guides, STIGs, for things like Ubuntu. So it's not whether it's open source or not, it's ensuring that you have enabled and enforced all of the security measures that will meet the requirements of the type of information you're using.
Yeah, the last thing for you, Mark, I'm really interested to hear what your experience was from the assessment. Every time you posted something, I was chuckling. But yeah, many folks feel they're in the hot seat, but then at the end of it, they're like, okay, it was very thorough, but it was good, right? So more importantly, going back to there's a lot of tools out there, as the team has mentioned, that you can leverage. I sat in on a demonstration that showed for CAD systems that the tool itself, the software solution, was living in the GCC high environment for Microsoft. And those engineers went in and manipulated whatever they needed to do with the CAD system. And once you hit send, it encrypted it in FIPS 140-2 validated encryption and shot it to the system. The system printed everything and then dumped whatever it was sent. So it never really resides over there. There's a lot of tools like that out there. And if you go to these CMMC conferences, you'll see the vendors there that are pushing their tools like that. So just do your homework and find it. There are some out there that can actually help you guys. Especially in the manufacturing world, we've seen a lot more companies. I recognize the software issues and this problem in particular. So they kind of go out and adjust these things. But remember, do your due diligence when you're looking at that. You want to make sure where that data is going to reside. If it's outside of your CUI boundary, maybe something you want to question or dig into.
Well, that's a great segue into this next question that came in, Rob, from Morgan. We are a manufacturing company. We are looking to build an enclave for level 2. Can you talk more about specialized assets? We have lathe machines and quality measuring equipment that we would be using in and out of the enclave.
Yeah. And so again, this is the struggle the manufacturers are running into. This goes back, Thomas, I think, to CMMC Connect we had a while back where we discussed G code from these solutions, and whether that was CUI, et cetera. So it is definitely very challenging for you guys. Again, the software is out there for you. Just keep in mind something Thomas always says, and the team here has already mentioned it. If it stores, processes, or transmits, not and transmit, or transmits, right? That is what you need to make sure that you are really taking a look at with whatever software solution you're bringing on board to assist you. Those 3 items are the keys. So if you have a software solution that is functioning in Microsoft Commercial, that's probably not a good idea to use it for your CAD systems. There is one client that we had that's an aerospace manufacturing. They were literally using FIPS validated USB devices to put the data on it, walk it over to the machine, plug it in, print or do whatever they needed to do with that machine, unplug it, and then erase the USB drive so they can do it all over again for the next project. That is very laborsome, right? So again, the software solutions are going to be your key to help you kind of streamline the processes out there. You just got to be careful of where that data's sitting. For those organizations, we typically see them in a hybrid environment. They're leveraging a cloud environment to put that CUI data in, and then they're leaving all their systems on-prem, and then they're segmenting that. They're putting access control lists on it. They're putting all the requirements for security there, and then they're just functioning as normal. The hard part is getting it from that cleared environment over to that system so it can produce a part. Thomas, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in.
No, I mean, you're kind of correct. I mean, for normal level twos, those specialized assets, there's very specific definitions on what they can be, and those are listed in the CMMC level two scoping guide. Understand the management consoles or the management interfaces for those. More than likely, they're probably not going to be considered specialized assets, and at minimum will be considered a SPA, a security protection asset. That's something that has tripped up, a few people when we went through assessment, especially, back in the early days. But definitely take a look at that level two scoping guide and start there. And if it's something a little bit more nuanced, please feel free to reach out to us. I'm a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to charge you for a question.
But he will ask you for a drink. Question from James. Apologize if I tear up your last name, James. Darrow is what it looks like. You're asking about, if you're already certified at NIST 800-171 revision 2, when revision 3 comes into play, do you have to jump back in and do your certification early to that, or can you wait until you come into your recert window? It is definitely when you come into your recert window. So for example, if you are CMMC level 2 certified right now and the Rev 3 was to drop today, you would not expect to see it until your recert happens. That's when you'll pick up Rev 3. That's why kind of Dr. Graham was telling you that towards the end of this year, you should start to see movement on the Rev 3 going through the rulemaking process like the first one did. That's your wake up warning. That's the shot across the bow that it's coming. So if you know you're coming in for a recert, then you need to start prepping yourself for that Rev 3, because that's what you're going to be set to when you recertify. Hope that helps.
Thanks, team. We have another question that just came in from Andy. For CMMC level 2, can you confirm that organizations are only expected to meet NIST SP 800-171 requirements, and there is no implicit expectation to implement NIST SP 800-172 capabilities unless explicitly designated for level 3-5?
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a great
Um,
question, Andy. Nice to hear from you too, buddy.
So, Andy, real quick, before we get to your question, I do want to address something else really quick, Monica, because there's been a little bit back and forth in both the chat and the Q&A. As far as marking and labeling, the requirements that you're held accountable to are, start at NARA's marking and labeling guidance, and the next thing would be DoD's labeling guidance. Those are going to be what you're held accountable to, whether it be basic CUI or CUI specified. There are some trainings that NARA has put out there, I think, as well as DLA, Defense Logistics Agency, on how to go about doing it, and even for those banners. If you can't find it, again, please reach out to us and we'll try and dig up the link for you. But generally, just a simple Google search should get you to those locations. Andy, as far as your question goes, so for level 2, it's not us confirming it, okay? It's the rule confirming it. In 32 CFR Part 170, if you are only held accountable to level 2, then that is the NIST 800-171 Rev 2 requirements. NIST 800-172 comes into play if you have to deal with level 3. Now, the concern by a lot of organizations is, well, how do I know if I've got to be level 3? In January of last year, the PMO or the department come out with guidance for the PMO shops on how to go about putting the correct version of CMMC into contracts. That has been the best clarification that honestly still we've been able to find. The other side of it is a lot of not a lot, but some of the organizations we work with, their contracting officers and sub-agencies have already reached out to them and told them that they are going to have to go through level 3. To the end of your question, I was trying to save Monica from having to read the whole thing, but it's not necessarily at their discretion. That documentation that came out in January of last year provides the guidance. So it's not all willy-nilly if you so to speak. But that is the delimiter on why not every organization has to build to level 3. Now, they can if they want to. Perhaps you may want to bid on a contract that requires level 3 at some point in time. As far as L2 assessments expecting L3 type maturity, no, they're two different things. The scoping is where the difference is really in those two. And I would advise you to go take a look at the CMMC level 3 scoping guide that the department has out there. But that's the most advice we can honestly offer at this point in time. Those assessments are conducted by DCMA's, which is Defense Contract Management Agency, their assessment arm, which is DIBCAC. And to date, they're still in the voluntary portion of it because phase 3, that trigger date, which is November 10th of 2027, still hasn't started yet. So until that point in time, the information that they provided on what they're seeing or some of the pitfalls has been kind of limited.
Mm-hmm. The other thing for you is we're getting a lot of questions from organizations that have either one, are trying to bid on a contract that may already have level 3 in it, or two, they're being pushed by their primes to get level 3. For those organizations, they're already CMMC level 2 certified, and they're reaching out to us here at Redspin as their C3PAO, asking if we can, help prepare them for level 3. So that's a question we have in front of the Cyber AB with it going over to the PMO office for clarity, because we have to avoid a conflict of interest. If we do any type of consulting with our clients as their C3PAO, that takes us out of the picture as their C3PAO and puts us back in the RPO role. So we're very cautious of how we're kind of moving that. My stance is that, NIST 800-171 revision 2 is level 2. And for level 3, it's an entire different regulation that we have nothing to do with. We don't inspect it, we don't certify it, we don't validate it. So a lot of confusion here that is expected when level 3 comes out, very similar to when level 2 started. There was a lot of confusion there. So I imagine over the next couple months, things will get cleaned up here. But I do know that they have done an official outbrief. When I say they, I'm talking the DIBCAC, the internal auditors for the DOW, of 2 organizations that they walked through level 3. Both those organizations failed. From what I'm hearing, I haven't seen anything documented, but it seems like there's confusion even in DIBCAC's interpretation of stuff, or it's a confusion in our interpretation of things as a C3PAO. So all that's got to get kind of worked out. That's where we leverage the Cyber AB, and there are our mediators to the PMO office, so we can get all of these questions cleaned up and cleared up, and then bring that to you guys here on the CMMC Connect. We will never tell you we can do something. We will never guarantee something to you, but what we do is articulate what the guidance is directly from the Cyber AB and the PMO office that is managing this program.
Thanks, Rob and Thomas. We might have one more question we can answer, possibly two, depending on how long we can get through these answers. So Jermaine is asking, during this week's Cyber AB town hall, the timelines for 3 phases were discussed, with phase 3 being full implementation. I was under the impression that there is a phase 4 that is 36 months after the start of phase 1. Can you clarify?
Yeah, so the phases are annually. The first phase began when November 10th of 2025, when the 48 CFR rule had that effective date of it. So that started phase 1, which is updating all CMMC level 1 contracts. That's going to take a year. So move from November 10th, 2025, when they started doing that. Their intent is to be complete with that by November 10th, 2026, which is this year. Then that date starts all the level 2 contracts. It's going to take them a year to get through that. So the completion date of that will be November 10th, 2027. That's when all the level 3 contracts start getting addressed, right? And then in November 10th, 2028, all level 1, 2, and 3 contracts should be up to date. And the phase 4 starts on November 10th, 2028, and they're going to update anything that was missed. Any older contracts that are out there that haven't come up for renewal, they're going to go back and clean those up and send them back out to you. And that way, by the end of November 10th, 2029, CMMC will be fully ingested into the programs and into the contracts. So it's a long phased rollout approach, but that's mostly for the contracting officers and the acquisitions teams to update all of those contracts, because there's a lot of them. So hopefully that helped.
Thank you. It looks like we have a question from Venkat. We are CMMC level 3 C3 PAO by you. From your experience, is it more effective to align a CMMC level 3 assessment with specific upcoming RFPs where certification may be a gating requirement, or to pursue the assessment proactively ahead of identified opportunities? Also, what key strategic cost or scheduling factors should we consider when deciding between an RFP driven versus proactive approach per your experience with others?
Yeah, so good to see you, Venkat. Yeah, I see your update there. Sorry, meant to say we're CMMC level 2 because that's where Thomas was going to start.
Yeah.
But yeah, for level 3, obviously we're seeing RFPs come out there. Again, there's a lot of organizations that are reaching out to us asking if we can help prep them. We're trying to get the answers on that because we don't want to step on any toes, and we definitely don't want to walk ourselves out of being your C3 PAO. That's a very trusted kind of relationship that we don't want to damage by helping you prep for level 3. On the flip side of that, you got to look at what level 3 involves, Venkat. It is huge, especially for a small company. You're talking 24/7 threat hunting. You're talking a full 24/7 SOC. You're talking full vendor management. All these different requirements that have been laid on top of level 2. Not many people can afford a SOC that's 24/7, right? So you got to look at what the cost analysis is of that. I will tell you, in conversations with a few of the primes, they understand this and they are trying to allow their subs to ride off of their level 3 requirements by using their prime SOC and those kinds of things. So really got to do your homework there. While you're doing that, Venkat, we'll be beating up the Cyber AB and the PMO office to find out if we can help you guys prepare for that. If we can't, we will definitely pass you off to an RPO that is primed and ready to assist you in that manner.
Yeah, Monica, real quick before we close this out, to your larger question, Venkat, about the implications and some of those. That's why I was saying reach out to us, because it's a little bit more nuanced and it really goes more into your business strategy and your business decisions versus simple met or not mets in the CMMC world.
Well, thank you everyone for your questions. That is all the time we have to answer questions for today. If we did not get to your question, we'll go through our chat and our Q&A and follow up with you after and send you an email. But before we wrap up, we wanted to quickly cover a few upcoming events that Redspin will be at next month. So we just launched a poll to see if you'll be at Soft Week. Mr. Robert Teague will be there along with some others from our sales team. So if you're attending, we would absolutely love to connect with you on site, meet you face to face, continue this conversation. And also just wanted to point out that Thomas is going to be speaking on the Secure Frame National Cybersecurity Summit, upcoming May 11th through the 13th. So a link to that event is on our resources channel if you'd like to register for that event. And with that, our time has come to an end for today. Here at Redspin, we are here to help move federal contractors to a more secure, compliant, and resilient state so they can achieve their mission. Thank you all for joining us today. We will see you next month on May 28th for our next CMMC Connect session. Take care, everybody.
Happy pre-Mother's Day to all the moms out there.
Stay. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.